Today is March 26, 2015, and in the last video clip I talked about some of the things that were happening in Colombia and some of the people that were involved. Well, another person who was there that I forgot to mention was Marianne McIntosh, and she was there, I believe, with Anne Crane. It might have been someone else, but it looked like Anne Crane. And I know that it was Marianne, so I mean, it's possible that it was Anne Crane, just because they sometimes like to have someone right next to another person that has a similar name, and then kind of confuse the two together. So like Marianne McIntosh and Anne Crane could be like two different Annes. But regardless, there was a woman who looked like her, and it was either her or someone who resembled her. And there were other women too. And so I was saying that some things were some things I was made to do, and I was programmed to do when I was really little. And then later, and it was made to seem very innocent at the time, and then, but it was rehearsed over and over, as I've explained. A lot of this programming has been done, and and I was tortured, and then later they were sometimes reintroducing that and using it to defend themselves about everything. So, for example, with the Bechtolds, this was at their house in Sherwood, and a couple of the houses that belonged to different government individuals were always getting altered and remodeled. And they had, in some places, like basically almost like torture chambers, and then someone would just pretend like all they're doing is remodeling their house. I mean, like, they look like normal people, had a normal house, and then if construction work was being done, you just think it's just, oh, the neighbor next door, fixing their house up and doing some remodeling. I mean, who doesn't do that? So nobody ever suspected anything really strange happening at some of these places, I don't think. But with the Bechtolds, they had at one point a door that went from their kitchen to the I think it was a downstairs, because I remember stairs. But what happens to be on the other side, in that general vicinity on the other side of the kitchen, is a garage. Like, so for example, now if you look at the house, there's the kitchen, and then at the end of the kitchen, like if you go in the front door, and then there's a rectangular space or whatever, room. And if you went to the end of that room, there was another narrow door, and as I recall, that door then led to stairs that went downstairs into some kind of a scary basement. But my memory is slightly vague on that, so I'd have to think about it just a little bit more. And what I do know is that it got covered up. The door one day was not there anymore, and they replaced it with an entire wall structure. And what is on the other side of that is a garage. And the garage was always there on the other side. But and if there is some kind of a cellar, or there had been a daylight basement of some sort a long time ago, I'm not sure if maybe it's completely covered up. They were involved in like the construction business, like a lot of others, so I think they could have done anything. I think even if you knocked out their wall to figure out, if there were stairs that looked like they had gone down to a basement at one time, I think it'd be hard to tell, because I remember that I saw some of the construction, and I knew that they were kind of smirking at me, because I think they knew that I knew there's no way anyone's ever going to believe what I could say about all this. And it was like made to look like things had never happened, and there was never this part of the room there to begin with. Well, the Myers did the same thing. They had a secret room, and they redid that entire room so that it seemed that it was never there to begin with. But they had a room that was blocked off from the main hall, and then you had to crawl into it. It was like a crawl space. It was inside the house, and I thought it was like this fun room for kids because it had a bunch of books in it. So I thought it was like you crawl under, you crawl in, and then you could sit and play in this one room that they had. But to outside appearances, if you walked down a hall, you would never know that there was a room on the other side of the wall. And that got built up too. Like a wall went in, and whatever happened to the other side of that, or what they did with that, or how they maybe expanded a different room from the other angle, I have no idea. I just know that it got boarded up and made to look like it was never there. So there were a few different families who were involved in some of these government things that did have secret places where they were hiding people and torturing people. At the Bechtolds' house, at the time, that they still had this door that went out of their kitchen into some other place. And it wasn't a storage closet either, because like one time the door opened up and my mom and dad were standing there. So, you know, it's not like my mom and dad could stand in a little storage closet at the end of the kitchen in their house. It wasn't a closet. It was like, it was a room or stairs that went down to another place. But as I said, I remember stairs. And so at around that time, I was getting electrocuted with the electrocution head brace at the Bechtolds, in the Bechtolds kitchen. And sometimes I was having my hand burned on their stove, and that was usually the area where they were doing their head brace electrocution of me. And some of the things that I was forced to practice before I was later sent to Columbia when I was older was when I was a kid, like a pretty young kid, I was being made to shave all of these different adults' pubic hair. They were making me shave them and make designs. And someone said one time, there was some kind of a joke that went around because someone had said at one point, oh, we're in fine shape. And as a kid, I had thought shape meant like the shape of someone's pubic hair. And so I actually thought if someone said we're in fine shape and their pubic hair wasn't trimmed into a shape, like a circle or a square or a triangle or a heart or something like that, I thought it wasn't fine. And I said, that's not fine. That's not a fine shape. And so someone said, well, what do you mean? And I said, because, I said, that's not a shape. And I would say, that's not fine. So they would laugh and think it was hilarious because I was saying it didn't look like a fine shape. And what they were doing is they were, I remember at the time that they were doing that, they were like sexually humiliating my mom, or one of the Dixies at one point. And Alvaro Pardo was at the Bechtolds' house one time when they were talking about some of these things. And so Janet and George had me, they were, I was getting trafficked around and tortured and everything at their house, and they had their escape plans all figured out. I mean, they figured out how they defend themselves if I ever talked about it later and everything. And one of the things was to, they told me that I was being coached to be a madam, and I didn't know what a madam was, but they were telling me that I was going to be a madam, and I had to manage all of these different individuals' appearances, like sexual appearance, and so they had me practicing with them, and they gave me a job. They said, "You want a job?" Because even when I was really little, I had different chores and everything, and I wanted to earn money or do certain chores or do work, as I heard it called, or have a job, so that I could get things that I wanted. Because I mean, I knew the value of doing some work and then getting paid for it or rewarded in some way when I was younger. So I would say, you know, I want a job too, or I want to go to work. And so one of the jobs that they gave me was was basically deciding what kind of a shape different people should shave their pubic hair in. And these are like United States government officials and people. And the other job was to determine like what kinds of services did this such and such a man want, and which of the women, of the government women that I knew, the adult women like my mom and like Carol Middleton or Janet Bechtold or whoever they proposed to me. They said, okay, you have these different women, and you have to match them to the correct man for what he wants sexually. But you know, as a kid, I never once thought it sounded weird or bad or inappropriate at all. I mean, they were basically programming me to think that all of this was completely natural, and none of them were that's how it was made to sound, is that everything was totally natural and there was nothing wrong with any of it. And I was the manager, so they had me inspecting everyone's pubic hair, basically, like it was no big deal, like, you know, we're at some kind of a resort, and you know, I'm the judge. And then they had me matching people to what I have to go around asking men what they wanted sexually from a woman, and what kind of woman they liked, what color hair, what color their eyes were, and then, you know, what kind of body shape they liked and type of person. And then I had to match them up with one of the women that I thought was best suited to that person. And so I was doing that when I was really little. I mean, and as I say, at the time, it was I was getting programmed, like I was getting tortured over it. So sometimes they were making me be more forceful. They said, you're being too nice. And so sometimes they wanted me to be like this mean madam, and like the mean manager who just I don't know, like Anna Wintour or something. And I just kind of like someone who would crack the whip a little bit and be take charge and take no nonsense from the adults. And here I was, this little kid, you know, and I was ordering them around. So and if I was too nice, they would tell me, you're being too nice, and they'd torture me, and then they'd force me to act meaner. And I said, you know, if you're too nice, people will get away from you. You have to make sure they're on a choke chain, so to speak, or they'll run away, and or they'll try to overpower you, and so on and so forth. So anyway, I was basically at the Bechtolds. They started laughing over it, and I remember some of them saying things like, "Haha, you know, we're gonna make her sound like such a bitch," and saying things like, you know, how cruel they were gonna make me out to be. And I, as a kid, you know, here I was like next to their stove, getting burned and tortured to do whatever they told me to do. And I was wondering what in the world they're talking about. Like, who were the mean ones? They were.